Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm so glad to have you with us today. My name is Cyndy McDonald, and this is, I think, like our 8th week of Friday Forums, and I'm so glad to be with you. I hope the sun is shining where you're at. It's a beautiful day here in Central California, and it's a beautiful day to have with me my guest, Kelly Mogilefsky. I almost said that right.
Almost.
And Kelly is from the Bay Area. And Kelly, welcome. We're glad to have you on our Friday Forum today.
Thank you for having me, Cyndy. It's great to see you.
So Kelly is a teacher, and she's a counselor, and she's an independent education consultant. And Kelly, can you just give us a little bit of background? Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Well, I've been in education for over 20 years now. I started out, and I'm still today, a high school English and AVID teacher. I've worked directly for AVID, which is a college preparation program trying to help serve underserved students and help them get into college. I worked directly for them for a number of years as a regional coordinator when that job still existed in California. And
yeah, I know how that goes.
Remember those days?
Yep, I used to be one of those too.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So moving on from that, I've also taught at Cal State East Bay. Around here, I'm actually teaching a course this summer for the teacher credential program. I usually work with method students, or I teach in literacy. A couple of years ago, 5 years ago now, I went back into the classroom to help open up a middle college program. So I teach at Las Positas College for high school students in our area, doing a middle college, which is like a dual enrollment program for juniors and seniors. So during that time then, I was in Cyndy's classes at UCLA and finished my counseling certificate there, and am also working privately as an IEC. So I split my days between teaching high school English and AVID and working as an IEC in my home neighborhood.
So you're not wearing very many hats at all, are you, Kelly?
Oh, I just do a few things. Got a couple kids running around the house, and you have
a husband,
so easy.
Well, as you can see, we've got, one of the things we do is we like to see who's in the house. So we're using the chat box, and I saw Shari Williams. She is former AVID and still AVID learning director here in Visalia.
Right.
So I'm glad to see her, and I know I have several different people who've worked with AVID that are have been a part of our UCLA program as well. So you can see we've got people from Switzerland and Long Island, and everybody. I just hope you're all staying safe. We didn't think COVID-19 was enough. Now we've, our world has just gone into more, I just don't even know what to call it, with the riots and the
turmoil and
unrest. And, we've got to do something. Our country has to do something in order to heal and go forward. So Vancouver, Canada. So we're so glad. So Kelly and I are going to do something a little unique today. Friday forums are usually about what's going on, how are we dealing with this? And then I'm also wanting to put in counseling and business tips and things like that. So I'm going to start my PowerPoint here. Let's see if I can get it going without too much difficulty. And we're going to talk about a couple of things and then go from there into discussion about surveys and how they're important in the work we do with students. All right, so everybody should be seeing my PowerPoint, and let's see if I can see everybody here. Okay, all right, so Kelly, are you seeing my PowerPoint? Okay.
Let me double check. I am not, but
let's see if the audience, are you guys out there, are you seeing, or no one can't see it. Okay, well, it probably has to do with having me find the controls, and let's share screen. Okay, so let's do this. All right, so now tell me what everybody's seeing.
Yep, that looks good.
Does that look good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there's my meeting controls. All right. So our theme for today is looking into a mirror, engaging students using surveys for self-reflection. And this PowerPoint will be posted on my website and blog. There's my contact information, and you have Kelly's as well. So that way you can follow up with her and ask questions. If we don't have time to get questions today, again, we had well over 200 people sign up. So we continue, the trend continues to be very popular and positive. So our goals have shifted a little bit. We want to highlight the past week's news and also provide advising or business tips. So that's one of the things that we're working on and have done repeatedly over the last few weeks, is just giving you those tips and tools and bringing in subject matter experts. After last week's poll, I've decided to discontinue the weekly forum. Now our lives are getting a little bit more busy, and we're going to move to 2 a month. So I'm going to try and set it up so the second Friday, we'll be talking about counseling and advising, and the fourth Friday, we're going to be talking about business. So that way, if you're still working in a school or an organization, you're not as interested in the business side, you can just join us on the second Friday. And if you're doing all of it, then we'll have both. So our next Friday forum will be June 26th. It'll be the fourth Friday. And we're going to talk about inquiry calls and closing the deal. How do you bring on new clients, especially right now? And, how do you increase your closing rate? So that's going to be our topic. And we'll do that on the June 26th. So I'll be setting up new registrations. Today is the last one on the registration series. So if you have any questions about any of that, don't hesitate to drop me an email and let me know, and we'll be glad to help you. So here's what our agenda is today. We're going to briefly talk about the week's updates. It's been interesting because the time has really, the updates aren't coming quite as fast and furious. And then we're going to do a role play. Kelly and I are going to do a personality type continuum. And so you can watch, and then we'll welcome your feedback. And Kelly's going to share with us how she uses surveys in her advising in her classroom. She's got an activity that I've done with her students, and she's done it subsequently. So Kelly, I hope you'll be able to share a little bit about that. And then our goal is what's on your mind? What I know you all use different surveys and things. So we'll do some group sharing. And of course, if we don't have time to get it all today, we'll put it together and share in our link to the resources. And that's already been put in the chat. So look at the chat and pull those out. Kelly's put her link in. I've put a whole folder in with a lot of things we're going to talk about today. Remember, use the chat box to, when you do, change it to all panelists and all attendees. Share with us your thoughts so that everybody can see them. That makes it much easier. So Kelly, are you ready to go?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. So let's see. It looks like we've got about 80 people with us today. So glad to hear it. All right. So what's going on this week? Of course, we've seen the world, many places where we live. I've been on curfew this week because of both peaceful protests and violent protests, and teaching our students about activism and civic engagement and all those things we are living in historic times. And so the more we can contribute toward making this a more positive, engaging place, and I know many of you are in other countries, and you're even seeing these protests in other countries. We've read about those as well. This is a time for us to step up as citizens and parents to help. Many of our students, the celebrations, there have been lots of virtual and drive-by graduations. I'm sure many of you have exciting stories. Kelly, how did they handle graduations in your area for your students?
So our larger schools, most of them made video, montages and had a videographer put something together. And then they did drive-through graduations where they decorated the parking lots and had some photo op places and let people go through. My own program has 140 students, so we had 70 graduates this year. And we actually did a virtual celebration where we recorded some speeches. We had students play music. We had a student play the guitar and another student write a poem. And then we actually came together on Zoom with, we did a webinar with our panelists being our students and then the attendees being the families. And it was a really special event to have everybody together in one place one last time before they went off into their next event. Yeah.
That's I know so many of our graduates, both college and high school, this has just kind of been stolen from them. So to have that kind of a special event, it's going to be something they'll always remember. So Kelly, someone says, okay, you got your email. I got it. So perfect. Thank you. So College Board, and a lovely Twitter I saw came through the other day. They are holding registration right now for international students. And those of you that are in international locations, I'm sure your students are very much affected by this. I don't know if I checked, I haven't seen any updates on this, but the whole registration, I know my students have reported that they can't get in and register for August or September. They're having to register for October, November. Have you gotten any reports from your rising seniors about when they might be able to, have they started registering for the test yet or not?
They're all on hold. They're being told that they'll be first in line, but there's been very little news. I think I haven't heard about arrangements for local testing sites for us. So I think finding the sites is the first challenge, and then they can actually offer the dates. But I also saw just a headline that the College Board was asking again for leniency about testing, not just for this year, but going forward, that they may not be able to accommodate everybody they had hoped that they would.
Yeah, think.
Yeah.
It was like, what took them so long? I know. Like, there's so many students. Because now you're compiling the seniors and the juniors next fall. And so that's, and many of the colleges have been very proactive already and have said, we're going to put this on we're waiving tests for 3 years. Look at what the University of California has said, they're in a process of, they've waived it next year and then they're going to be looking at that in the future. Yep. So yeah, I expect there'll be some more things. So those of you that are on the call, especially if you're international, what are you seeing? Share with us in the chat box what you're seeing, and we'll share that. And also, keep in mind, I am recording this, so you'll be able to share this with other people, and it'll turn into a podcast, so you can listen to this too. So one thing I found very interesting, and I'm going to share here, is the Chronicle of Higher Education has a list of fall college plans. So I thought that was very interesting to have that. And it's actually data from more than 875 institutions. And amazingly, 67% are planning for in-person instruction in the fall. So that's coming, and people are, things are starting to ease, and I think just the whole social distancing, they're trying to do planning for in-person with social distancing and all these things. But you can see some of the other plans, planning for online, they're proposing a hybrid model, 8%. Some are waiting to decide. I don't think that's probably such a good idea. And then those that are considering a range of scenarios. So this is available through the Chronicle of Higher Education. I'm sure this is going to change as the time gets better. There's just, that's such a big question mark, not only for the colleges, but for our schools. I know a lot of schools are talking about doing hybrid and some days on campus, some days off, and splitting the days and, things like that. So the whole getting back to normal is not going to be, we're all waiting to see what our new normal is. It's not going to be back to the old normal anytime in the near future. So have you heard any things, any comments like for East? I know East Bay, the CSUs are all going to be online in the fall, right? Have you heard any other things?
No, nothing different than what is listed in that great article that they're keeping things up to date, that, you know, each college is handling it differently depending on their local conditions. And I do think that a lot of them are going to have to be ready to pivot quick if they have any kind of outbreak or any kind of hotspot going on. So even in our own work at Las Positas, the vast majority of classes will be online. They're allowing some in person for those that are kind of critical lab classes and things like that that really need to be face to face. And then everybody is sort of prepared for the possibility that we would have to do some kind of online for some amount of time, a month or whatever, if we start to see any kind of issue in the area.
And that's the big question mark, right? Is, you know, will there be another spike? And especially with, you know, all the other unrest going on, that might contribute. And we're hoping that we'll be able to do that without, you know, not have any spikes that correspond with this. So I'm seeing in our chat box, you know, yes, university presidents are asking for immunity from lawsuits. Because of possible reinfection. I know yesterday they were testifying in Congress about this. Carnegie has told their students. So when you're posting in here in the chat, you guys, make sure it goes to all panelists and attendees so everybody can see them. I'm seeing some of these are to just all panelists. So that is very helpful. So Jeff is asking about Stanford. Have you heard anything about what Stanford might do, Kelly?
Not particularly. They kind of haven't been on my radar, but they're talking about rotating students by quarters and having groups of students come through quarters. I think the size of the campus matters a lot. You know, the bigger the campus is, the harder it is to put something together. And there is some advantage to the smaller campuses just being able to manage groups of students better. So it would be interesting if they could pull that off, where they're rotating students through by quarter. It could be very interesting.
So exactly. And then you're challenged with the size of the camp, you know, like the rooms and the capacity they have. So a smaller campus, you know, they might have a little more flexibility. I know my daughter works at a public school in Colorado, and it's like, we don't have rooms big enough to social distance everybody.
Exactly.
You know, so they're really not sure. So it looks like,
I can post an article about Stanford. I mean, it really looks like they're primarily online though. This is a lot of what other schools are doing too, where they're saying anything that can be online will be online. And then with what we feel like can't be online, then we start to do the work to rotate people through. Yeah.
Well, it looks like Lizette and others have said that Stanford is rotating students that they've announced it the last few days. So, and then somebody asked about Carnegie. It said Carnegie has told their students they are going hybrid. So that's what Carnegie Mellon has done. So so still a lot of uncertainty in those areas. And again, it's still going to be shifting sands. You know, things are going to, you know, as a situation, and that's good. I mean, we need that agility right now because situation can change, and they need to be able to handle that. And I was talking to an epidemiologist yesterday, he's worldwide, and he was saying that, you know, a lot of schools are having their instructors, their professors plan for both. And they're giving their options that the students can choose to take the course online or in person. And the instructor needs to be ready to do both. But it's a whole different thing, you know, doing instruction online versus in person. You know, it's a different approach. You know, it's a different lesson, you know, planning and such. So, yeah, I that's a challenge, and I know the instructors and professors, it's a huge challenge for them. So,
and we're facing those same challenges at the high school level too.
Oh yeah, well, and you're at an early college too, so so
we're
what
straddling both.
Yeah, absolutely, and the hybrid. There's a lot of research that can show that could go really well, but it's hard to do on this snap, right? Yeah. You can't just say, okay, on Friday, Monday, you're going to do this.
Right.
That's the difficult. So this week I've been giving prizes out for who's the future focuser and who has their head in the sand. Well, this week I gave my prize out to graduating students. COVID did not stop them from celebrations, as we saw the videos, and I'm seeing all these pictures on Facebook, and students are sharing. It's just so exciting that they've turned this into a great opportunity and still a way to celebrate. I don't know. ACT. Some of you guys may love ACT. I've usually been a real big fan of ACT. It's not that I don't love them, but I still think they deserve the head in the sand. They are still having students go in and take the test in June 13th, next Saturday?
Yeah.
And so many of the test centers are not open. I don't think there are any open right now for the June 13th. I don't think any of my students here in my county can take it. There are still some say they're open in Fresno area.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are you guys hearing? I just am so, it's just like, come on, let's make a decision. You want to be agile, right? But you also don't want to be wishy-washy either. And so I see, Karen says they're ridiculous. ACT makes it more stressful for the students. Rebecca says there's none open in LA. So, one student's doing it at the high school with accommodations. Yeah. So, I don't know. How realistic and how representative is going to be a student taking an ACT test in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic at a school? I don't know the value of that right now.
Cyndy, I was in a webinar with the ACT rep very early on in all of this, and it really seemed like they had their act together. I was super impressed. They were talking about, they've already been moving towards at-home test versions. They already had that in the works for years, that they just seemed ahead of the game compared to SAT, and then they sort of disappeared. And then they kind of lost the ball. Like they had that early push, and then they I don't know, you're right, they stuck their heads in the sand. I don't know, it's been a little frustrating.
And I think, and exactly. I mean, they've always been very proactive, and this fall they're announcing all these changes and stuff. Why not just move forward and do that? So, and our California students in New York the same way. Neither state students were able to take the ACT in July, and now they're able to, but none of my students can find a place to go take it. So it's like, what good does it do? Yeah. So it's somebody else says they thought they canceled in Connecticut. That's it's state by state, it's locality by locality. I mean, they have this whole list, and I don't know, I'm guessing it's changing every day. But what school is going to want to bring in all these students when they haven't had students in there for months, and they have to sanitize and get everything ready, for the fall? I just don't see the sense in it. So. AC Karen says she has they have all the test sites listed on the website.
Yes, they do.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So you have to go through the website and go see, is your test site still there? Is it not? Which ones are still available? And if you're not, then what do you do? Right. So,
one of the questions in the chat, maybe you know more about this, Cyndy, saying that with people, with the colleges saying they're optional doesn't really matter. And the one thing that I'm seeing, especially with UC, is that they're still using them for scholarships. They're still using them for potentially course placement. And so however much we were all so happy, I don't know, I was so happy that this test was going to go away. And it's just not going away because they're still going to use it for these other measures. And so, you know, they are maybe getting it out of admissions for a year, for 2 years, or trial, UC's phasing out. But until they find some other way to do things like scholarships, it's not going to be off of the radar.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. And that's the thing that I garnered this week too, as I was listening to webinars. Like, yeah, they may not be using for that admissions decision, but for placement, you know, for scholarships, for where you fit, you know, wait list. I mean, it's still going to be a factor.
I heard an admissions rep in another talk as well say, well, we are definitely optional. However, if we find out that the test is available in your area and you didn't send us a score, then we're going to wonder why you didn't take it or why you didn't send a score. So that is a, you know, very competitive small school, but
yeah, that doesn't seem.
It's not going away is the message, I think.
Right, right. So, okay, so one of the questions, does test optional mean test blind? If there are some students who have already taken the test and many who have not, if student A submits it and student does not, what happens? Well, and that's a great point. Test optional is not test blind.
No.
So like here in California, the California State University system is saying, and she used this term in a webinar recently, this last week, they had a whole webinar on this. It's like, we are going test blind. If you, we're not going to look at test scores. If you send them, we're not going to even look at them. But they are going to use them for placement. So they're not even truly test blind either. And so for test optional, it's like, we're going to evaluate you based on what you send us. You're not going to be disadvantaged if you don't send scores. And there are some reports and if that have been done, or studies have been done, that show the classes for schools that do test optional are not less academically talented than schools that use test to recruit their classes. So, yeah, test optional means something different than test blind. And, you know, it's one of those things with our students, unless there's a very good reason, and there are many good reasons for students not to take tests, but I always try to encourage them to take them. It's better to have them, not need them, than the other way around. So lots of discussion and lots of things. We'll bring on a test prep person sometime and have them, you know, talk about that. And I know several different people that would be glad to help us with this. So, all right. If there is, let's go on and let's talk about using surveys. So let's see if there are any other chats or things, Kelly, that we need to cover.
UC is test optional, correct? Not test blind, but CSU has said that they're test blind. And then a rep from Cal Poly popped up and said, but send them anyway, which confused a lot of people. But, but the system is going test blind and are just using GPA. And they're saying campuses will start using other measures as part of their system, which not all campuses have done before. But UCs are the ones that are test optional, which means you can still send them.
Right, right. So, yeah, and she says there's no standard, Talon says there's no standardized test. How you level the field. A 4.0 GPA from my high school in Mississippi is incomparable to a 4.0 GPA from Palo Alto. Exactly, and we have the same thing, and I'm sure you would do too, because you know, you're not going to be able to compete with other more you know, affluent schools. Yeah, I mean, that's why their applications, their essays, you know, doing these surveys, it's, but I think go back, and those of you that joined us last week, we had, you know, 2 college representatives on the call last week. Colleges are looking for reasons to admit students, not to not admit them. And so we just, as counselors and advisors, is helping the students to find and identify and highlight all those reasons to be admitted. So, you know, it's not a perfect world, but you know, goes back to being agile, and a lot of the colleges are going to be giving benefit of the doubt. And we've seen already many colleges have already gone deep into their wait lists and will probably still be going into their wait lists, you know, clear into the fall. And so the opportunities and what's going to happen this next year are unique. So, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. All right, so
Cyndy, before we move on to the surveys, there was a long comment. You might not get a chance to read it all while you're hosting here, but I did want to address it. A few folks asked for us to address it.
Okay.
Susan Carr's comment about everything that's going on, talking about the unrest and the aftermath and the current racism we have in our communities. And I know, you know, we've got a plan and things we want to talk about today, but this has been on my mind a lot, and I'm really reflecting on my IEC work. I sort of have these two hats, and so the work that I do for the middle college, we very much work on representation in our groups. We work on our curriculum, trying to have curriculum that is very meaningful to our students and helping them navigate these issues when they're at the community college. In my own IEC work, I'm really trying to think hard about how I can serve multiple populations in my community, serve the African American community at my local high school. I'd love to connect with Susan if she wants to send me a note and see what would be recommended. I have some ideas. I want to see if I can do some work with our parent groups around here. But I'd be happy to say more. And I think we do really need to think as IECs in our local communities where we work, who are we serving and who are we not serving? And is there anything that we can do to make sure that we're serving the populations that maybe wouldn't easily find their way to us?
Right. No, I totally agree. And I'm glad you brought it up. And Susan, I'm glad for you bringing it up as well. And I do know, Susan, we've met a number of times and appreciated her, you know, your expressions to me in the last month. And yeah, we're not trying to skim over it for sure. It is a huge issue. In fact, Susan, what we should do is have you come on and just have you talk about all of this, because you can talk about it from a much more personal level than I or Kelly or any other, especially white person. I heard the phrase this morning, white fragility, and we need to be able to to talk about this and identify all of our weaknesses and our prejudices. And so yeah, why are young people protesting? There are definitely disparities in our education system. Why is COVID-19 affecting African American communities at a higher rate? It's because of disparities in our medical system. And so, I see this a lot being in Central Valley, not only with, because we have a large Hispanic community, we have a large undocumented community here that I see just being passed off. And that's what's, there's just so much going on. So thank you for bringing that up and for sharing and what we can do to help. And also, Susan's shared a couple of books. Is this shared with everybody? Do you have this? Yeah, so it's everybody. You can read that. And Susan, I'll touch bases with you too, and let's see what we can do. I know, Susan, if you're available, I'm going to let you talk. Is that okay with you? Because I wanted you can tell people about your foundation for your son as well. So let me see if I can do this. Let's see. Let's find. Okay, so Susan, I just put, there she is. Okay, so now you're on, you can unmute your, let me unmute you.
You're not looking at my face because I'm not dressed up, right?
We're looking at your face, yes,
Oh,
we
yeah.
are.
Yeah, just your picture, just your
Yeah,
picture,
we're
Susan.
looking at your picture, right, that's what
Yeah.
I meant by your face.
Oh, you my screenshot of my
Yes,
picture?
just your screenshot.
My
You look
glam-
great.
Yeah, we see a screenshot.
Wait a minute, of my glam picture?
Your glam picture.
Not okay. You guys are making me get nervous now.
No. We see your glam picture. We just see a photo.
Okay, you don't see the real me.
No.
Okay.
We'll save that for another time.
Okay. No. Well, you know, Cyndy, you guys are. I've always been admired. I learned a lot from you guys every year. Every time I come to the sessions, when I see you, and you know, I'm in it for the students, and it's hard. It's been a hard week. Hell, it's been a hard life that I've led. Even though I'm a Black privileged person per se, where I'm not fighting for food or education, but I see so many people are. And so I think that it's important because I've seen it from so many of my friends this week who are calling and asking for answers. What do we do? You know, how can I help? I feel so inadequate. I'm not your friend. But the reality is, if it doesn't affect you, sometimes we look at it and say, oh, and we move on to the next. I know you have another session. I want you to finish what you have to do now, and I'll be more than happy to support you. You know, my son Justin went to a predominantly white institution, Harvard Westlake, here in the LA area, and he wrote a poem about how he felt, you know, that he felt like a fly in a bowl of milk alone. He was a student who was a Renaissance man. He loved the arts. He loved the visual and performing arts, and he was 6'3", and he said it was hard being him because he was Black and people just assumed he was going to play basketball or football, but he was a swimmer. So we allowed him to be the artist and everything that he was. But, you know, unfortunately, he wanted world peace when he was 4 years old. He died 7 years ago in his swimming pool at school at practice from an undiagnosed heart condition. So our foundation is Justin Carr Wants World Peace. He wanted to help the underserved. He wanted it to include everyone. So his message is resonating loud more than ever right now. So I'm not going to take away from you guys, but I'll be more than happy to do a session with you guys so I could really explain it better. But I was really, you know, I just had to type all that because I was, you know, I was surprised that it was, you know, and I know you have an agenda, but a lot of my friends are saying that when they're talking on their Zoom calls this week with their jobs, people act like there's nothing going on outside our walls, and there is, and that's something we need to take notice of. So I wasn't trying to, like, you know, get, you know, change your platform, Cyndy, you guys at all today, you know, but I just had to say it. I'm glad you listened, and I'll be more than happy to talk offline, and I'll be more than happy to participate.
Okay. Well, we appreciate it, and that's why, you know, we do want voices to be heard, and you know, we do want to come together, and you know, and it is interesting, you know, I think, I don't know, I reflect back on my own experience. I was not privileged at all. My dad didn't even graduate from high school. I've shared this a couple of times. So he didn't, you know, so college was not ever anything that anybody in my family, I'm still really the only one that's gone to college. I'm the only one that has a master's degree. And I remember going to a private, small college and being the only one poor. And people just not understanding. They're out there throwing money and not understanding that I can't do that. That's why I'm so connected to AVID, because I know what AVID students are going through. And, you know, and I would do things to really try and save money. And then they would say, oh, well, we're all just going to like go to dinner. We're all going to split the check. And I only ordered like one little thing because that's all the money I had. But they were so used to splitting the check and stuff, then they didn't even occur to them that somebody might not have the money to pay for everybody else's stuff. And then I got stuck having to pay for it because I wasn't going to say anything. And I hadn't even ordered hardly anything. So I learned just to stay back and not go, or, you know, just not participate because you know, they just weren't aware. and I wasn't going to speak up. So it's the more we can share those experiences, and especially, I mean, mine doesn't compare at all to what, your community is experiencing right now, Susan. But we want to support, and so yeah, I'll contact you and we'll get you on, and love to hear from you and how you instruct us and what we can do and how we can be more supportive and come together.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you,
all
Susan.
right.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very, very welcome. And thanks for all that you're doing and your contributions too. So. All right. So yeah, so that's where having all of us work together and, be with, sharing our own experiences and teaching each other is very much key. So we will shift back and let's talk about using surveys and, how do we help students, and even, with personal experiences and historic experiences, helping to gauge how students are reacting. Kelly, do you use Socratic chairs or Socratic seminar in your Avid classroom to help students to process some of this that's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've actually been out of session for a while, but I do know that even some of our graduates have been in contact with us, and especially our history teacher, who does a wonderful job of holding circles and giving people a chance to talk about how they're responding to things and what they feel like they can do to become empowered. We have some students who have taken on some initiatives at the colleges that they went to with some support to be able to really keep this conversation going and keep the focus where it needs to be to try to get some change. So we make space for that. We encourage students to be involved in our campus and our campus activities and to share their voice with everybody. So we do that in the Avid class. We do that really kind of pervades our program.
Yeah. And it's, and as instructors, advisors, being able to lead that, process and discussion is really key too. So, okay, so I have pulled up, so hopefully you are seeing my personality types, right?
Yes.
Am I sharing? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what we're going to do now, and it looks like this took way more time than I anticipated, but so we're going to do this really quick. And I just wanted to share a little bit. When I first started doing college counseling, I thought, how am I going to know what to recommend for a student or how to advise them if I don't know the student? And how do you get to know the student? Well, you give them activities or surveys or assessments to help them learn more about themselves. This journey is much more of a self-reflection. It's learning and digging deeper into yourself. And so helping the students to do that helps them. And then it also helps us to be able to know and understand them better. And so I started collecting surveys and doing things. And that's why I asked you to come join me today, because I know you've done that as well. So one of the things that I wanted to demonstrate is doing a self-reflection. A lot of times when you give students a survey ahead of time and then they come back and you go over the results, they may or may not be seen as applying. The student may say, yeah, that sounds like me, or no, it doesn't. And when you're a counselor and advisor, that can be a little uncomfortable. If all of a sudden it comes back and you ask them, oh, you've got this, 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 and this, does that sound like you? No, not really, right? And so I wanted to just demonstrate one of the things that I do as a counselor is do a self exam with the students first, and then I go over the results, because in that way I don't get surprised and I can explain any discrepancies for them. So it says enlarge my document on my screen.
And I'll reshare the link from the top for folks who came in later. People are asking for the link again. So
all right, thanks. And I'm glad to see Susan is sharing lots of links too. So this is based on Myer-Briggs. And so I'll bring students in, and now I've been doing virtually, and I go through this with them. And if the parents are available, we do this with the parents as well. And I always explain that, you know, everybody has all different personalities, but we all fall on continuum, and some are, you know, sometimes we're more and sometimes we're less. And so understanding where we fall in the continuum, it's not all one or nothing. It's very helpful. So I've found using the continuum metaphor is very, people understand it and they can relate to it, and especially my students. So Kelly, you're going to be my student, and we're going to start and talk about this and kind of assess, have you share where you see yourself and what kind of personality to have on this. Normally, I would spend a good 30 minutes on this. Today, we're going to condense it a little bit just because of time. So the first thing is from Myer-Briggs, and those of you that are in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you're interested. I mean, if you are familiar with Myer-Briggs, you know, let us know. Say, yep, I know, or no, tell me more, something like that. And we'll be putting some different, okay, so I'm seeing a lot of yeses. Good. Joyce has got yes. MBTI, yep, okay. Use science is similar. Okay, great. Yeah, it's been around for a long time. So a version of Myer-Briggs is on AchieveWorks. That's with College Planner Pro, absolutely. So, and then some people, it's going to be new to them. So then you can, and for most students, they haven't been exposed to it. So this will be a new way, a new opportunity to learn. So there are 4 different personality, our personalities break into 4 different sections. And I am not trained in MBTI, many of you may have been, so please understand that. I know several people that colleagues of mine have been extensively trained in this. I have not, so I just take it from a very layman's perspective. So please take that into consideration. But the first level is how we interact with the world and where we direct our energy. You know, what brings us energy and what drains energy from us. And so some people like to focus attention outward. They gain energy from people or being around people. They like crave that social engagement. They're often very outspoken, and they often learn from interaction with the physical world. And other people, their focus is more inward. They enjoy dealing with ideas, information, or beliefs. They like people. It's not that they don't like people, but they often prefer to have more intimate or smaller groups. They often are perceived as being very thoughtful, introspective, and they learn more from interaction with ideas and values. So Kelly, this line in the middle right here says at the 50% of the continuum. Mm-hmm. So where would you put yourself in terms of how you interact with the world and where you direct your energy? Would you put it toward the introversion side or the extroversion side?
Well, this one's always the most difficult for me, Cyndy, and whenever I take these tests, depending on the test I take, I fall on one side or the other. And it seems to be the factor of, you know, how long the test is. This one used to frustrate me a lot when I took tests because it would flip, and I felt like, well, it's either got to be one or the other, right? It really can't possibly be both. And it was only until I started seeing this on a continuum and using some of the resources. Someone mentioned 16 personalities. I have that linked in my resource. Some of the newer ones that really actually give you more of a percentage. And those are the ones that I have really come to appreciate, especially working with students, because it's not so you are this or you are that. It's really in the middle. When I look at your descriptions, there's only one that I would not say is true. All the rest seem perfectly true for me. So this is the one where I focus a lot of my attention outward on other people, but I need time to focus inward. I really enjoy social engagement and small groups, and I teach, so I'm very outspoken, but I am also fairly introspective and spend a lot of time with that. So I like my quiet. I like my people too. And so I really do put myself, I think that one factor, a lot of people, you know, if you've read Quiet or any of these other things, talk about where do we gain our energy from. I do think I gain my energy from my time alone, and that the people are a little draining. However, in this COVID environment, I've also learned that people are energizing and having to be away from people quite so much doesn't make me so happy either. So, you know, sometimes it's our environment that impacts these things too. So I'm going to leave myself right in the middle on that one, Cyndy.
Okay, so we're going to put them X right smack dab here. And this is what I'll do with students, and then the parents. If they're available, I'll get their perspective, and sometimes, you know, they'll give their information. And one of the things that's so valuable about doing this is just hearing, and, you know, like hearing you explain where you're at and what you think, and hearing the students hearing their parents explain how they see them, and the parents hearing their students talk about how they see themselves. So that just that activity that's most important of all. So definitely. And I see somebody made a point about students are being so afraid of being labeled introvert so much that they deny it. And that is very true. They didn't, you know, introversion has gotten such a negative label, become such a negative label that especially teenagers, they all want to be extroverts. So, you know, somebody mentioned there's AchieveWorks and College Planner Pro, and there's also Find My Spark, written by Claire Law, that's in Guided Path. And the introversion scale is, you have to be 60% or more to be, you know, identified as introvert for that exact reason within Find My Spark. So that's very true. But it gives an opportunity, and that's why sitting down and doing this is so valuable, because it gives you an opportunity to talk about it. Or if you're doing a classroom, you could have all the students have this, and then, you know, have pair share and things like that. The kind of information, the second kind of part of our personality is the kind of information we naturally notice and process. This is how we observe the world and bring in the world into our lives. So one side is, you know, reality, facts, figures, you know, black and white. The other side is, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. They enjoy theories, speculation, things like that. So where would you put yourself on this scale, Kelly?
Well, I like to talk theory, but I do think, and I do try to be creative, but I know that in general, I'm a pretty wood and nails kind of person. I'm very much of the focusing on reality, data, facts, direction, and really trying to describe sort of the real world. Living with someone who's a little more visionary, I can tell you I'm not that, because it is a very different mental space, especially when you're trying to make life decisions. So I lean myself a little bit more on that, you know, maybe 75% over towards that sensing side.
Okay. All right. Good. So then once you pull in the information and you've processed it, then you're using that to reach conclusions or make decisions, you know, and direct things within your life. So that's the third element of the Myer-Briggs or the personality types. So using logic, objectivity. Sometimes people can look and come across as detached because they're doing this very objectively. It's very black and white. They're guided by information. Or on the other side, it's, well, yeah, it's that, but if I do this, it's going to affect these people in this way. They're often using values and making those decisions. Oftentimes they can seem too involved and very much guided by beliefs and priorities. So where would you see yourself?
You can throw me way over on the thinking side on that one. I think
like how far over?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay, all right. And then the fourth one is, how do we prefer to organize our lives based on our conclusions, or live our lives and implement those changes or decisions. One side is having structure, routines, and many of these are overlap. Like I can look at these. I'm very familiar with Holland and their styles, and we'll talk about that in just if we have some time. You see a lot of overlap between those philosophies or those models. So routine, structure, predictions, like to have control. They often strive to be organized. Their rooms may not be organized as teenagers, but there are other things in their lives. That's one thing we teach in Avid a lot, is that organizational skill, right? And often they tend to like to be on time and be punctual. On the other side, they like to have flexibility, they like to adapt, they like to be spontaneous. They don't like to be tied down with a lot of rules. Routine sometimes can get monotonous for them, and oftentimes they're not punctual. So where would you put yourself on this?
I wish the middle meant conflicted, but I think it's that the middle is the best place, because this is another one where sometimes, especially working with kids, as we were talking about before, perception and reality are two different things. And it can be hard to rub up against perceptions of a student that they have of themselves, of their parents have them, of their community have of them, their culture has of them. And sometimes this gets into things like gender, and gets into race and expectations. And it can be very challenging for students to see themselves kind of as they truly are. And this is definitely one. People see me as organized. You wouldn't want to see what's behind you on my desk right now. But I put on a good show. And so, I like to be on time, but I also find myself doing things on whims and getting things done in large pushes rather than by structuring my day, even while I stand in front of the class and tell them how important it is to structure their day. So, this one's kind of my dirty secret, I guess, of myself, because I'm very much an advocate of all of the structure, but I know in my own life I'm a little more whimsical. Not that I enjoy it, but that's kind of where I am.
So would you put it on the judging side, or you have to pick one?
I have to put it in the middle. I don't know. I mean, I guess judging, if I have to put it on a side. I strive to be organized, but I prefer to be punctual. I strive to have a schedule, but but when I live my life, I kind of fly by the seat of my pants. So, yeah. So,
and then up here, I put the X on the extroversion side. Is that more accurate, or should I put it on the introversion side?
Put it on the extroversion side.
Okay.
That's okay.
All right. So then we'll go back and we'll see what your code comes out to be. And so for you in this, according to your own, our discussion, so we're going to do E, S, right?
I got told that I'm judging myself. I guess so.
And that's why we love having the chat. I'm seeing all these wonderful discussion points. You guys, this is great, because I love having the interaction with each other and, how we, communicate. So this is great. So E, S, and I see some of my UCLA students here. Glad to see you on, Heather and others. So we have E, S, and this is what I have the students do. I'll have them circle. Okay, so you're an E, you're saying you're an S, and T and J. So E, S, T, whoops, J. All right, so now I'm prepared as a counselor. I know what you think. I know why you think it, and I understand where you're coming from, and you understand a little bit more about what this is all about. Then we would go into whatever survey that you've taken, whether it's through AchieveWorks, 16 personalities, whatever. It doesn't, whatever you're working with as a counselor, and then see how it compares to what your survey came out. So Kelly did a survey last night, so tell us how it came out.
It came out fairly well. The only difference was that it put me on the introversion side, and actually a little more than I usually get. It had me up at introversion at about 63%. And I really, when I take these tests, I usually do hit right about 50-50. For that one. And so, and some of the tests I have shared in my doc that I'll put up in there, I really like because they allow you to be 50-50. And then when they show you your options for what your different markers are, it'll show you the ones that are on one side and then the ones are the other. So you might get 3 options and 2 of them are I's and 1 of them is an E. And so I really do like the ability to be, qualified about these. I think it helps with students too. Students do sometimes balk at these tests because no teenager likes to be defined by somebody else, especially if that definition doesn't match their perception of themselves. And it really does help to use the ones that have a little more flexibility. They are truly still very flexible, and their life experience does change, sometimes day to day. And so giving room for just a little bit more gradient, I think helps in the conversations too, and you spend less time trying to justify the measure, justify the ruler and really talking about the results, because it really is in the conversation that you finally get somewhere with helping students understand themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your online assessment, the extroversion or introversion was the only one that was opposite of what you said, right?
Yes. Yeah. Everything else was the same.
Yeah. And sometimes, and then that helps confirm, what you found, and it gives you an opportunity to discuss. And if they're different, then you get to talk about that too. So, does anybody have any guesses as to what my personality type is? Let's see what you guys think. I know we're like almost out of time. Youth Science is still great. It's $10 each. If you buy a minimum of 10, they still have that. And so that's very, very true. So, So mine would be extroversion, intuition, feeling, and perceiving. So sometimes I do like facts and figures, but I don't, I'm looking more at the what ifs than Stephanie says ESFP, Cyndy. Exactly. So, all right. So where did you get the test that you did, Kelly?
So I just put in the chat the link to a document that I put together for this. The first section is about those Holland codes and some places that you can get free versions of the Holland code, including Cyndy's personality mosaic, which I've used with my class and is a wonderful introduction. So those are some of the ones I use. And then there's a section on the Myer-Briggs. The one that I used is the 16 personalities, which somebody mentioned as well. I like that one. It's very user-friendly. It has nice pictures. Students seem to like it. It has a little bit different take on it. And then Truity, they're a little pushy with their pay products, but I really do like their explanations. And they also have a careers tab where it helps you make that jump from the personality to the careers. And then California Career Zone is actually kind of a one-stop shop for all of these things. They include a really simple, they're fairly simple stuff, but a basic Holland code inventory. It then does career matching from that inventory. They have a work importance profiler, which is really interesting to do, where it talks about, do you value rewards, independence, relationships, support, what kind of actual working conditions would you like? And California Career Zone isn't specifically for teens. It's in line with, also being able to use for adults. So some of it's a little bit more career minded, like I need to restart my career or something like that. California Career Zones uses the ONET data. Somebody was asking about ONET, and it uses the same data as ONET. I like their data. Their tools tend to look a little old fashioned
Yeah,
to
they're a little
students. I do these
yeah,
a lot
they
with
are.
whole groups of students, and they're not quite as user friendly in that way, but I think the data is pretty good. Maybe the one place I'm seeing difficulty with ONET and some of the other tools is really when it comes to matching these personalities to careers. Their lists of careers are a little outdated, I guess, or maybe not as robust. And so students, you know, get something like farmer, or not that they wouldn't want to be a farmer, but, you know, here's this like suburban kid who's like, it's telling me that I should, what did I get? Chicken farmer, I think last spring for somebody, like something very specific. And they're saying, why would they choose it? Here's this like super artistic, you know, girl who's like, they're telling me that I should be a chicken farmer. And it was very strange. So sometimes the career matches with ONET aren't, I don't like them quite as well. I have in my teaching unit, I do a full, very robust, like 3-step teaching unit with my AVID students with this. But in the step 2 career matching, somebody's asking about which career matching is best. I haven't found one that I love, so I send students to a lot. The Truity and the 16 personalities, I think 16 personalities has a career match. I know Truity does. And I have a link to that in the doc for the career tab. So you can find that one there. There's a career match to Myer-Briggs on another consulting website, and Business Insider had a good article too. So what I like to do is just send students to a lot of different matches. Now I have my personality data. So now I'm going to look at a bunch of different career match sites, because those are always going to be limited by what their data set is, and then see where they go from there.
Yeah, yeah. And going back to, we were talking about the Holland model and the career map. And once the students identify kind of, you know, where they are on the career maps, whether they're, you know, social, artistic, investigative, you know, those 6 different categories, and then seeing what else is connected to that, helps at least give them some directions that they can go. You know, if I'm enterprising, that tends to be more marketing or, you know, business or corporate or things like that. And so at least gives them some fields of interest and study to start directing that search. So, and that's another reason people talked about UScience, you know, because they does connect to careers. I found the same thing. It's really tough to find really good tools to connect. ONET, their career, the My College or My Career Search, I think it's called, you know, does have some of that. But you're right, you know, it's just, it is dated, and so it's hard for students to relate to it. So yeah, so anyway, definitely, you know, it's seen lots of comments, and
I'm loving some of the career matches. Tree feller, mortician. This is fabulous. Why would they put that in the list? I don't understand. How could you be that specific off of a personality survey that you would want to fell trees specifically?
Yeah. So it's all, I mean, and college has gotten so expensive that if you don't have some idea what your strengths or skills or interests are, you know, it used to be you could go to college and just find yourself. Well, now it's a little expensive to go and just find yourself. Although a lot of students, I mean, undeclared is still one of the more popular majors, but at least having something that they could have started with, and that's why surveys are so important, because it is a start on that self-reflection and they haven't ever had an opportunity to really dive deep into who they are, what they should be doing. And they'll have maybe they'll have a careers unit in 9th grade or 8th grade or something, but it's never really as deep as like what you've done and what others have done. So, So it says, ask questions, any tips for creating online surveys for students we can use to keep them engaged? Well, that's a whole big question, isn't it? Like, oh my
I
goodness.
let other people, I mean, using multiple of these, at least I find, is really helpful. Students tend to enjoy doing them. If you metered them out a little bit, you could redo them or try a different one with them. I think there's a lot out there that you can do. And I haven't ever tried to create my own, because that feels like diving into waters that I wouldn't want to get into too much, but definitely using multiple resources I think is really helpful. And to your point, Cyndy, in the step 3, especially when we do our teaching unit, and then I do this with my private clients too, we don't stop at the personality inventories. We go from there. When we find that career, we go look at job postings for that career. What does this job actually entail? Does that sound interesting to you? Would you actually want to do those things? And then when we look at majors at the colleges, we dig into what are the courses that you would take for that major? What are the descriptions of those courses? Does that course sound like it would be fun to you? Or does that sound like a nightmare? Because really understanding what it means to study in a subject a lot of students say, well, I kind of got this career. Just had this conversation with a student yesterday. Journalism seeming to be like a good idea, but I don't even know what that means. And so what does an actual job look like? So now we need to find a book and find some videos and to really understand what that career looks like. And I do think you can, as an IEC, know that you have a student who's a little uncertain. And then when it comes to college fit, I think one of the things to do is to try to find a college that is strong in multiple of their strength areas. So my student who is, really loves the environment, but is this fabulous artist, and is rather conflicted about which way she wants to go for a career, if I can try to find her a place that has some fairly good quality in both of those areas, then if she does end up making a switch, at least she's in a decent place. I don't, if I drop her into a place that would be all science, with no paint in sight, then she might find herself kind of sad. So we want to honor all of their strengths, not just for their career, but also what do they like to do with their time, and can it be an enriching experience for them? We can find that out too from these surveys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is definitely a topic we could have spent another hour on easily, but I know we're way over our time right now. So Kelly, thank you so much. Appreciate being able to have you, and we may get a chance to revisit this in the future. I'm going to be starting to offer some courses. So this will be one of the topics that I'll cover. And so, we'll get a chance to do some things a little bit more, through that for those that are interested. And everybody, thanks for joining us today. And also, if you have ideas of topics or things you want to have covered, or people that you think would be good to have come and join us in this conversation, have me talk to, I would love to have that. And Kelly, thank you again for being with me today. And we may have to do an encore on this. How does that sound?
No problem, Cyndy. You're welcome. It was great to see you and talk to you.
All right, everybody, have a good Friday. I'll see you in not next week. Remember, it'll be the end of June, so watch for emails. Okay. All right, take care. Bye, Kelly.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.